it's nice to be really aggressive, throwing in those balls, crashing it in, going straight in with a rig and wallop roach first chuck. Any big roach in the peg or big perch or anything is casters. Well, my tried and tested mix for rivers like this is 50-50 black roach and deep water. You know, what an awesome river. We've had roach, dace, perch, even an odd little chub. Well, this is the mighty River Trent. We're on a famous bit called Burton Joyce. It's full of fish. The river looks absolutely stunning today. Hopefully we can ball in 10 of these and hopefully catch a nice weight of quality silverfish. That's the plan anyway. Throw 8 in, cup 2 rich ones in over the top and catch some nice dace, roach, perch. We'll see what we can catch, but hopefully we're gonna have a lot of fun in the process. Right, this is probably the most exciting part of the day for me. Just throwing in a load of ground bait. Nothing could be more fun than just throwing in a load of bait around your float. So I'm going to throw in 8 of these with a little bit of bait in, some dead pinkies, dead maggots, casters, bit of hemp. Then I've got 2 very rich balls I'm going to pot in over the top just for accuracy. These don't have to be overly accurate, but it's important to feed them downstream. Don't feed them directly in front because I need my float to be working by the time it gets over these balls, and sometimes you can catch just above the balls as well. So we're going to throw in 8 of these. Wasn't a bad shot. I'm just trying to get just to the right of that float, but I don't mind an odd one being a bit short. I don't want to go too far. I'll hit my float with that one. Got my eye in anyway. Spadoosh. Sometimes I'll cup these in, especially if you know pike are in the area. Sometimes cupping in is a bit better if pike are about, but you get a quicker response if you bosh them in, and obviously everything's faster as well. I might have had a feeder swim, I might want to feed or something else. Everything's quicker and you're straight on those fish. So what I'm going to do now is quickly ship that rig back and get my cupping kit out, and we'll quickly pop those 2 balls in. They're quite heavy, so be very careful. Heavy balls, there's a bit of soil in them. And don't be scared to make them a little bit smaller if you're not quite sure, but that's just about right for me there. We're only fishing sort of 12.5 metres. I've got half a metre of pole behind me. I've made the mistake of fishing too far out on this river before and wishing I'd fished a bit closer. Everything's a bit easier if you fish 12, 13 metres. So I'm all lined up halfway along my 13 metre section. I'm just going to gently pop those in. You could drop them from a height to make a bit more noise, but we've already done that. So I'm just sneaking these 2 in. And plus, if you're not too accurate with your initial balls, at least these 2 balls give you the confidence that you've got some bait exactly where you want it. Try and line it up. Just making sure I'm not dunking my pot in the water as I go out, because then it suddenly becomes altogether heavier. And these can be in a slight line, I don't mind, but make sure they're downstream. The faster the river, the further downstream I'd probably feed them. Hopefully we've created a nice hot spot there to catch on, and we could loose feed a little bit of hemp or casters over the top. I'm not going to feed anything else to begin with. And I'll see. I might want to feed hemp, I might want to feed casters, I might want to feed both. I might want to feed maggots, but at the moment I'm just going to catch over those balls of ground bait. Now we've got 1 more swim I want to feed. That's it, 2 swims today is enough. Always like to have a close in worm swim. And it's only, what's that, 4.5, 5 foot deep tops. I'm just going to get a bait dropper and just bait dropper some worms in there. By the time I've done this, there should be some fish on that. You know if it's going to be a good day because there'll be fish on that line straight away that you've just balled in. Sometimes they take a little while to find it, but at least by crashing some bait in, we've stacked all the odds in our favour of something being there straight away. So I've got a nice bait dropper full of chopped worm there. Again, this is downstream, level with the fence, about there. Bosh. Yeah. And we're going to just pop 2 of those in. And it's always a dilemma. Do you start on the worms for a quick run of perch, or do you start on your balling line for a quick run of silvers? Well, I want to start on the balling line today, but I will go on this line pretty quick as well. I've just popped a few casters in as well with that. Mostly worms, just 2 bait droppers, that's all. And we just got a nice worm swim fed there. That's it. That's the exciting part. Just boshing a load of bait in. Now it's the anticipation to see if we can actually catch over it. And I'm going to start on a positive rig. If you've got 2 or 3 rigs set up, start on your most positive rig, because if there are fish there in numbers, you might as well make the most of it. So I've got a nice positive 2 gram rig, and generally I think the fish are rushing around at the start, so fish just a little bit off the bottom. There's no need to slow the float down or fish over depth or anything at the start. If there's any fish there, they'll be there and they'll be off the bottom, rushing around for all that bait that's gone in. And the most instant hook bait I think you can try to start is a single red maggot. So we'll try and find a nice big one. Just single red maggot. That'll give us, let's wait for the car to pass, that'll give us the best idea of what's in front of us. Give me elastic a bit of a swish to make sure, it's fresh elastic in that, so got to bed it in a little bit today hopefully. And then we're shipping out. Nice long line, because it's the Trent, it flows quite hard. If this was the Avon or the Thames, I'd fish a bit shorter line because it's a bit more of a sedate trundle, but the Trent flows a bit. So you want a bit of line to be able to follow the fish down. That's why my rigs are quite long today. So anyway, I fully expect to bite quickly. Hopefully it's a, there we are, oh, missed that one. Hopefully it's a decent dace or a decent roach, but it might be perch, it might be bleak, could be little chublets. You just never know on these rivers. That's half the fun. You don't know what's in front of you from one day to the next. Oh, there we are. That's a quality fish. And I fully expect to catch right over those balls. What have we got? Oh, we got a perch. Oh, we are swinging. There we are. Nice chunky perch to start off with. Don't mind catching those. Right, another big red maggot. Could fish double maggot, but sometimes you miss a few bites on double maggot. So just make it as easy as possible to get a bite at the start. What I hope to catch is some decent silvers right at the start. That's always a good sign. But sometimes they might take an hour or two to arrive and settle down. So you never quite know. Sometimes there's dace on the scene straight away, and then the big roach tend to come a bit later on those sorts of days. But yeah, straight away over the balls. So by fishing a little bit off the bottom at the start, I know if that float goes under, it's not dragging under, it's a fish. Later on we can mess around laying on a bit of line and edging it through and stuff. But this is good, this is what we want. Get straight in. There we are, we've got a dace I think. There's some lovely big dace in here. I love it. Brilliant. That's what we want. Bang, bang, bang. Get a quick, you know, sometimes you can go in and catch, I'll put a big fluoro maggot on this time. Sometimes you can go in and it might be your best catching spell of the session. So make the most of the first half an hour. Make sure your rig's dead right and everything, and you really need to capitalise on this initial spell. And sometimes you catch your best fish. And then I expect it to go a little bit quiet, maybe the second hour. And then the third, fourth, fifth hour, it will get stronger and stronger again. That's what often happens when you do this sort of fishing. But every day is a bit different. Ooh. I'm just letting it run through. But I fully expect to catch best over those balls. But later on, I'll be running it down. Oh, we bumped that one. Check that maggot. later on I'll be running it down, and sometimes you catch some bigger dace or perch, or you know, hanging off the end of the feed. But when it's good, they'll be right on those balls. I'm not messing around. I've got a 16 hook, 010. It's a positive river, this. And although I've not fished the Trent loads, it's not. I don't think you need the finesse like the Avon or even the Thames or whatever I've grown up fishing. I think you can be a bit more robust with everything on the Trent. Getting bites. Anyway, we've had a bite every chuck. Just following that float down. Anywhere there, it should be going under. That's the furthest down we've gone. Oh, they've all gone already. I'm not going to run it any further down than that. There's no need to chase them just yet. Just get it straight to the top of the swim again. And I want the rig working now. And about now it's over my balls of ground bait. And that's where the fish should be. That's a bite. There we go. What we got? Another perch? Another perch. We can quickly do a pound or two of these in no time, really. So we've had a dace, so we know there's some dace in the area. And now the dilemma is, do I just fish it out? Do I try and catch for as long as possible? Or do I start loose feeding and try and make something happen? And I need to think, are they clearing out all that bait? What's happening? Do I have to feed hemp? Do I have to feed casters? Do I have to feed every single drop? Do I need a top-up ball? All those sort of things are what you work out on the day, really. So at the moment, I just want to see what's over those balls. Try and assess what is about. If there's roach about, I'll definitely start feeding some hemp and casters. But I'm happy just to run it over those balls to begin with. There's plenty of bait down there. This is lovely. So satisfying when you strike and something's nodding back. But you could catch anything here. There's baby barbel and things like that sometimes people catch. If it was a decent fish. Oh, I think that's a roach. The hardest thing, because it's quite a long rig, is getting them in netting range and without a pike grabbing it. So he doesn't want to come in at all, this one. That looks like a decent roach. Proper Trent roach. Lovely. There we are. Well, that's a great sign. We've had a dace, some perch, and a big Trent roach. Hopefully they'll get a bit bigger than that. There we are, plenty of dace, a few nice roach. We've had a chunky perch that weeded me, but to be honest, if this was a match I would stay on that line and just keep fishing it because it's nice, and I've already had some nice perch on that line as well. But I'm itching to see what's on that chopworm swim, so maybe there's some fish there. If there's a chance of a pound perch, even a big eel or something. So we'll have a quick look on the chopworm, but I won't stay on it too long because I'm itching to get back out there over those balls of ground bait. So we've got a nice positive rig, no messing. size 14 or a 12 hook. I can't remember which one I put on. Just put a nice big bit of dendy on. Just chop the very head off and just put the tail on. And this is just 4 sections to hand. Level there, somewhere about there. It's a bit rocky, a bit reedy, a bit everything there, but the minnows and things are all around this sort of area, and that's why the perch are there as well. There's always perch close in on these rivers. There we are, straight away. Oh, shut under. Sometimes it's full of gudgeon and things, you know, these rivers, but fully expect to catch a perch or two. We've had a bit of moving around and I think we've had a bite straight away, so the cameraman hasn't put them off. There we are. Chunky perch. That's what I was expecting. That and bigger, hopefully. But you have to go on these perch pretty quick because they'll eat it pretty quick. That worm's still alright, so let's go back out. If you're not careful, perch will gorge themselves. So by the time you've gone, they've ate it all and full up. Oh, wow, was that a roach or a dace? I wasn't expecting that. It's mangled my worm and come off. That's a good sign anyway. Wow. Let's move these worms nearer. Yeah, you could put a big bit of lobworm on or something, but I always think a dendrobina is a nice size to start off with. I have got some lobworms down there. We might put a chunkier bit of lobworm on. This is a no nonsense rig. It's 2 gram, nice and heavy, so I can sort of hold it over those worms. If it was any faster, I wouldn't hesitate to use a flat float, a lollipop float. There's a lot of fish there. But we'll try a big bit of lobworm as well, because if there's a big perch, then sometimes that's what they prefer. There you are. I'm a no nonsense rig, 12 to 14 slick on this. So one, so I can swing in fish like that. Oh, it's full of worm. Go on, I can see the hook. He's not giving me my hook back. There it is. There we are. Yeah, so a strong elastic, 12 to 14 slick. One, so I can swing in chunky perch, which dive deep when you hook them. And also because of the potential for snags and things. So yeah, don't feel you have to fish light elastics close in for perch, because we're swinging it hand anyway, so we just need to boss those fish. You could hook anything on this line, but that's a good response anyway. Don't know what that silverfish was. I didn't even break the worm off that time. Loads of perch down there. Worm's still good. Make hay whilst the sun shines, so keep going. Whilst they're there, just keep clattering them. I always delay the strike, make sure they have it. Crikey, there's some fish there, isn't there? A lot of small perch, I think, in the peg. Well, bait wise, it's worth bringing a selection of baits. It's hard to come to a river without some maggots. I've got some bronze maggots, some red maggots, and I've got some big fluoro maggots there as well. And I will swap between them, but if I could choose one colour, it'd be red maggots on the pole. They just seem to pick it out nicely, 1 or 2 red maggots. But what I really want to catch on is what I really like to catch on. You seem to catch better fish if they'll have it, if there's any big roach in the peg or big perch or anything, is casters. I've turned these myself, beautiful casters, and yeah, I always put the darkest ones I can find on the hook. Sometimes you get an odd little floater in your tub, they're the ones I tend to put on the hook as well. Just helps counterbalance a size 16 hook. So a couple of pints of casters is ample for this. And then hemp's definitely good. If this had a bit more pace, it's probably the only thing I could loose feed is hemp, because it's dense and it's a heavy, and it will go down where I want it. I can control where hemp sinks a bit better than casters or maggots. Certainly on a fast river, if I loose fed maggots, they'd be two, 3 pegs down, and even casters, they fall quite slowly, not as slow as a maggot, and they could be out of your peg. So but hemp is a lot denser, and hemp is a great bait for keeping them down as well. And also if there's any roach in the peg, they love hemp. So we can try hemp on the hook. I've also got some tears. Again, I've cooked these myself. I tend to try and pick out a nice small tear for the hook. You could feed a few, but it's just a nice option for hook baits really. And I freeze and thaw these multiple times, so these are probably a year old. And they just actually, the more you freeze and thaw a tear, the more rubbery and softer they are for the hook. So I prefer old tears that I've had in the freezer. I've got some dead maggots and dead pinkies just mixed together there. They're good for going in the balls of ground bait because it helps stop the ball breaking down prematurely. It means you can mould them up and get them down. You could quickly put some live maggots or live pinkies in a ball and quickly squeeze it and ship it out as well. Sometimes I'll do that, but if in doubt, just put some dead maggots and dead pinkies in there, and they just stay on the bottom. I will try them on the hook as well because they're a bit softer, a bit waftier, and sometimes when fish are on the drop as well, sometimes a dead maggot can be a bit better than a live maggot. It just sinks a bit slower, and I don't know, they just seem to hang on to it a bit longer. I've got some fluoro pinkies. Try and get some nice big fluoro pinkies. These generally go on if it's hard. Later on in the session, or if the river's had a bit of hammer, then 1 or 2 pinkies on the hook can be brilliant. Today, I'm fully expecting to just catch on maggots and then casters, hopefully. And then I've got some worms. I've just got some dendrobenus, generally dendrobenus, but if I've got some lobworms, I've got a few lobworms. There's about 5 or 6 in this tub. Some lobbies can be good, not essential, but a few lobworms can be nice. But generally, just some dendros for the hook and for chopping up on that short line. You could put worms in on the long line, and I've got no problem chopping up some worms later on. Sometimes it can give you a boost of fish, especially if there's some skimmers about, or if the perch are really feeding. Then maybe some chopped worm on the ground bait line can be good, but I don't tend to put them in at the start. It gives you an extra thing to try later on. So that's the baits. We've got plenty of baits, but really what I like to fish is maggots and casters, and loose feed hemp as well. We might catch on hemp later, but if not, I'm more than happy to be catching them on the caster. Alright, so we've had a nice run of little perch on that short line. Nothing massive. And my best perch has been on this long line. So I've quickly topped it up. Another little bait dropper with worms, a few more casters. Hopefully that will bring in some better fish. But this is where the action is really. I'm getting plenty of bites on this line still. Started feeding, alternating hemp one cast and casters the next. Just, I'm missing an odd bite. I always think if you miss a bite, it's a dace. So you will miss bites if dace are about, and we've had more dace than roach anyway. So yeah, I've just started feeding a bit of casters because there's obviously a lot of mouths there, so we've got to keep them fed, got to keep them occupied. We might cup another ball of ground bait in, but at the moment I'm happy just to loose feed and see if that works. Ooh, missed that one as well. But yeah, I'm just swapping between a couple of rigs now. I've started off on that 2 gram rig, which is a nice positive, bosh it down, get it down, catch fish. But if you start missing bites, then I start to try and fish a lighter rig and see if that makes any difference. Sometimes they hang on to it and don't spit the hook bait out so fast with a lighter rig. They almost don't feel quite so much resistance. So I've got a gram rig. Oh, that was a tiny fish that came up. Yeah, so I've got a gram rig. half the weight, and this has got shot strung out. Well, I'll go through the rigs in a sec, but sometimes you're missing a lot of day spites. Just putting a little bit of finesse into your shotting without a big positive bulk, a bit of strung shot, a lighter float will sometimes see you catch some more of those nice big chunky days. Other days you've just got to bulk it all and fish even more positive. So you've got to try both extremes. Try a nice light rig, try a big heavy clunking rig, and at different parts of the day each rig will probably work best. But definitely don't be a slave to one rig. You'll miss out if you just fish one rig all day. So I like to have 2, sometimes 3 rigs, and swap between them. I've got a nice positive 2 gram rig just for running at them with a bulk. I've got a gram rig with strung out shot, positive strung out shot, number 8s, almost like a stick float. And then I've got a half gram rig which may or may not come into play for fishing sort of a foot, 2 foot off the bottom. If they start really coming up, and a really nice light rig can be good. There we are. So we're catching on this rig, but I do think my 2 gram rig is still better. What we got there? Oh, nice roach. Maybe catch one more on this, and then we'll swap back to that 2 gram rig. Obviously, the more positive you can fish, the better. Well, let's have a closer look at the rigs. I prefer a sort of a round bodied float, or a just slightly bodied down bodied float with a plastic bristle and a wire stem. The wire stem just keeps it, gives it more of a keel when you're holding against the flow. You could use carbon. Carbon won't tangle so much, but it will also ride up a little bit more. So a wire stem float just keeps it down when you're holding the float back. So these are an old float, but there's loads of floats like this you can purchase with this sort of shape, and I think it's best to have a family of them. So anything from half a gram up to 4 gram, I've got this float, but realistically 3/4 gram to 3 gram would probably see you on most rivers I fish. So I started off with a 2 gram round bodied float, we'll call that. Now the main line is 014, which is a bit thicker than I used to fish on a river, but these days I'm finding it's more robust, you get less tangles. If you hook a pike or something like that, or your rig flies off, your main line's still in business. It allows me to confidently move my shot up and down a bit as well. So yes, I might have in the past used an 010 or a 012 main line. For these bigger rigs especially, I prefer an 014 main line. Now then, it's a 2 gram float this, my starting rig. I use a 1.5 gram Olivet with that, and that allows me to have plenty of shot built in below the Olivet as well. I could have used a 1 3/4 gram Olivet, but I'd rather use a 1.5 grams because it gives me a few more shot to put directly below the Olivet, and then 3 number 8 droppers. I generally use number 8 droppers on a 2 gram, 3 gram, 4 gram rig, and then sort of from a 1.5 gram rig we'll have number 9 droppers, and then a gram and lighter, generally number 10 droppers, maybe number 11s on the really light rigs, but that's what I generally do. Number 8 droppers on this rig is ideal. And then 6-inch hook lengths for most of my rigs these days, and every rig today has got an 010 hook length and a 16 round bend nickel hook. Micro barb as well, I think that's important, especially with dace and that, because they will flap off the hook if you use a barbless hook. So and because it's a fast pacey river, these are long rigs. You'd call it a traditional top 5. It's a long top 4, I call it. I've got a long top 2 kit, a number 3 and a number 4. So it's a 6 metre rig. If I was fishing the Thames or a lot of the bits of the Avon I've grown up fishing, I wouldn't need the number 4s. I'd just fish like a 4.5 metre rig, a long top 3, or an old, what you call a traditional top 4. But on this river and bigger rivers, anywhere there's a bit of flow, plenty of line above helps you run it through. So that's my starting rig, that's me bagging rig, that's me bossing the current rig. And then I've got 2 more rigs set up. The next one is a gram. It's a little bit slimmer. This one's carbon because I'm running it through with a flow, and it's a bit more almost like a stick float, this, in a way. It's a little bit slimmer, carbon stem, again that plastic bristle, but I've got a strunger shot. I could have an Olivet and a 2 or 3 droppers, but because I'm catching a lot of dace that reject the hook bait fast and everything, and I just think by softening it out with a load of number 8s in a taper, I don't know how many there, I'm not going to count them, all the way down. I think the last couple are number 9s, maybe the last 3 are number 9s, but that little taper there, I just think works through the peg nicer, and they don't reject the hook bait so fast if they feel any resistance. So it just softens it up, and it's a bit more like a traditional stick float. And we are on the Trent, and stick float fishing's synonymous with the Trent. So I just think having it strung out in the bottom sort of third, I could string it up even higher if I wanted, but that does the trick, and I just think that's nice on rivers like this, where especially where there's dace or anywhere there's fast biting fish that are rejecting it. Then I think that's good. But certainly I could just have an Olivet and 2 or 3 droppers. I'm sure that would have worked today as well. So that's a gram rig, half the weight of my my positive rig. I've got one more rig set up. It pays to have 2 or 3 rigs because it gives you options, it gives you scope. So this rig is similar to the last rig you just seen, but it's just half a gram. And it takes about, I'm going to say 12 number 10s. Again, I've got them in a taper in the bottom half, and I can set this rig anything. So let's have a look. That's my depth there. 1, 2. At the moment, I'm fishing about 2.5 foot off the bottom. So this rig is a searching rig. I can fish it full depth, but generally this really light rig is for fishing up in the water, especially if you start loose feeding a lot. Sometimes the fish just want to come up and they're happier up, and you can't force them down, and that's when this rig comes into play. It doubles up as a nice hemp rig as well. Now all 3 rigs I've got 6 to 8 slick elastic, and on these I've got them all through a long top 2. For bagging you could potentially just have it through the number 1 section, and it wouldn't be a problem, but I do like that extra bit of elastic. If I hooked a big bream or a big chub or something like that, that extra elastic means I've got a better chance of getting those big bonus fish in. It sometimes makes it a bit harder for swinging fish to hand with a bit of extra elastic, but it does soften up everything. It means you can throw your pole around, you're not going to bump fish. The more elastic the better, you don't bump fish, but certainly some people prefer it just for a long number 1 section, and it's easier for swinging fish in. But I just find I bump fish, and I bump less fish with more elastic in my top kits, and I get my bonus fish in as well should I hook them. So yeah, and I generally slide them over the surface anyway, a lot of these fish, you know, and lift them out, if in doubt, net them. So and then the final rig is just our chop worm rig today. Meaty old rig this. It's only shallow, I'm going to say it's about 4.5 foot today. I've got a 2 gram, again wire stem, round bodied float, slightly thicker, slightly longer bristle, and this is for fishing worm or big baits. This is on either 018 or 020 main line, and then the hook length is 016. Number 8 droppers again, an Olivet, number 8 droppers. And I tend to go a little bit longer with this hook length, so they're probably about 8 inch. If it was really fast, I'd go as long as a foot full of hook length. But it's 016 to a meaty size 12 hook, because I'm fishing big bits of worm. Could be half a lob worm, 2 or 3 casters, could be anything. So, and number 8 droppers just gets it all in position and just helps me nail that hook bait in place. And then I've got 12 to 14 slick elastic there, meaty elastic. I should be able to get in anything I hook on that. Yeah, you could go fine if you know there's lots of smaller perch than that, but I know on this river you could hook anything, and it means I can swing in those chunky perch to hand. The swans have come to say hello. So yeah, that's the rigs, 4 rigs. I could have easily got away with 1 chop worm rig and two rigs for my ground bait line, but I have got that lighter rig which may or may not come into play. That's a bit of a luxury rig really. But yeah, that should be all that we need today. Let's get back there and catch some more fish. give you a little trick. We're on the Trent today. I'm fishing a long top 4, a 6 metre long rig. Now, not everyone's got number 4 sections or an old number 5 in old fashioned terms. So if you haven't got several number 4s, don't worry. As long as you've got 1 or 2, we're fine. So I'm going to put that there. Hopefully it won't roll away too much. Yeah, all you need is a long, slim pole winder. And then you can hook your rig up that's not in use up, 3 or 4 winds, there we are, and then just pop it up the back of your number 3. Whoop. Easier said than done. There we are. Just pop it up the back of the number 3, and then that can go on your roost, and then you can pop this on your pole for your other section. Well, my tried and tested mix for rivers like this is 50-50 black roach and deep water. They just work really well together. Obviously black roach is self-explanatory really, full of roach attracting goodness, but other species like it as well. Bream like it, dace like it, chub like it. So the deep water is a bit more of a new addition to my mixes in the last couple of years since it come out. It's a bit saltier and fish definitely seem to respond to it, so they just work well together. The deep water also is a little bit stickier, and I just find you can add a few more particles to your mix with those two. Now there are extra things I can add. If I think I'm on a lot of fish, or if I'm on a positive river like this, then I'll add about 1/3 of a bag of sweet skimmer. Smells beautiful, smells just sickly biscuits, and it's just full of food. And I just find if I'm on a lot of fish, if the venue's fishing well, then sweet skimmer really does add a little bit of an extra kick to my mix. I don't use a whole bag, probably about 1/3 of a bag today is all I need, but it smells beautiful. You can certainly smell it when it goes in your mix. And then the other ingredient, if there's some flow like the Trent, then I might put up to half a bag of river in. Just a natural river. It's very sticky, it'll add weight, and it'll help your ground bait bind. On the Avon and the Thames that I fish a lot, I don't bother with the river, but on this sort of venue, a little bit of river just gives it that extra bit of binding power. Now the other ingredient I always put in my balling mixes, it helps it go a long way. I call it Jon Arthur. It's just soil out of my back garden. So topsoil basically. The soil in my garden is very nice and dark. It's just like using molehill soil or something like that. You can buy Terre de Rivière or river soil in the shops as well. But good old fashioned topsoil from my garden is that I've had a bucket of it for ages, and I just riddle off all the big bits. And it just helps bulk your mix. I'll happily put half my mix as soil. It helps your mix go a long way. Similarly, you could use brown crumb to help dilute your mix and help it go a long way. The other addition, if it was a bit faster or a little bit deeper and I really wanted to make sure my balls of ground bait went straight down, then I've had a bag of aquarium gravel for years now. I'm just getting to the bottom of it now. Just fine aquarium gravel, and I'll add that to my mix. Just mix it all in with your ground bait, mix it in with your top up balls, and they'll go boom, they'll go straight down. You don't have to add a lot, but it does add extra weight, and obviously you're not feeding the fish. And I don't generally bring this bag. I've just brought that to show you. It's a really old bag. I just bring it in little pots like this, little screw top pots, and that's more than enough for a match or two. Saves you bringing a whole sack of gravel to your peg as well. But a little pot of gravel like that, I add it to bread punch and things like that as well. Very useful addition if you want to get your bait down without having to add soils and things. It makes sure your ground bait's exactly where you want it. So there we are, there's our mix. And what I'll say is as well, that's it all mixed together. So yeah, you've got all these ingredients together, and because I've added soil and everything, I want it on the wet side, and I generally do use a drill and a whisk for this. I don't tend to use a drill for commercial mixes these days. I'm more than happy to mix up 2 kilos and push it through a riddle by hand if I need to. But for this sort of volume, because you've got sticky ingredients and stuff, I do prefer to use a drill and a whisk just to help get it all aerated and everything, get it mixed thoroughly. And I do mix it on the damp side. Don't mix it too dry. If it's too dry, it'll fizz and pop and it'll come off the bottom. You'll attract smaller fish into the peg, and a lot of it will go down river. Over wet it a little bit. I'd rather it was almost to the point of looking stodgy and ruined than the other way and being too dry. So nice and wet, it'll go down and it'll do all its work on the bottom where you want it to. Don't mix it too dry. Don't be scared to over wet it a little bit. So there we are. It smells absolutely beautiful. Well, we're still catching an odd fish. They've gone noticeably smaller now. A little dace there. And we probably don't need to do it today, but I'll show you a little trick that works a treat, especially on harder days when you've maybe had a good couple of hours and it's just gone slower and slower and slower. You've got to be brave to do this, and you can probably only do it once, but that's just to reball it. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to mix up probably 4 or 5 balls, stand up, throw them in again. It's something I do with 45 minutes, maybe an hour to go, and you just get that extra run of fish that can see you over the finish line. So let's try that. So I've baited up, I'm going to quickly ship out, and you could hold the pole and do this, but I prefer to put it in my roost. Got some under and over pole support here, pop it in there, make sure it's half a section back, stand up and give them 5 balls. So we've just crashed 4 or 5 balls in, and fully expect the fish to rush in again, and you're almost nicking the fish from the pegs either side sometimes when it happens, but you can't keep doing it. You can probably do it once, maybe twice, but sometimes just a couple of balls. But I think giving it one big hit, 45 minutes to go, can really help see you over the finish line and just get you those extra few bites. But you've got to be brave, you've got to be brave, and it doesn't always work, but it's very satisfying when it does. So we've got a small fish, but we've had a fish straight after throwing them in, little dace. So I've not packed the balls with feed either. I want them to find my hook bait now, so I haven't absolutely rammed it full of bait. I think there's fish there anyway. It's almost just creating a bit of commotion, a bit of cloud. Just something for them to rush into and investigate. So many times I've done this, and then all of a sudden you've caught an odd big roach that maybe you wouldn't have seen if you hadn't have done it. Fish, just edging a caster through. I think it's oh no, it's a roach. Oh, we'll definitely end on a roach. Should be able to just lift him out. There we are. There we are. A lovely roach to end on. Woo, a bit flappy. Cracking roach on the River Trent. Burton Joyce, famous bit of river, Ashfield Angling day ticket stretch. What more can you ask for? I've parked just there, I'm sat in the river, balling in groundbait, catching plenty of roach and dace and perch. Missed a few bites, but that always gives you plenty to think about. So I've had to swap and change the rigs to try and keep in touch with the fish. I think trying to keep them down and edging a caster through just over depth's definitely been best at the end. And a maggot just off the bottom was right at the start. They did come off the bottom, but they seem to be smaller fish. But that 2 gram rig has definitely been best. We've had some on the lighter rigs, we haven't really needed them today. And to be honest, we haven't really gone on the chop worm swim as much as maybe I should have done. I've just enjoyed going out there and catching fish, throwing in ground bait, clonking that hook home, and you never quite know what's on the other end. But we've had some lovely fish at a lovely venue. What more can you ask for?